Woohoo!
Good morning. Good morning to you, Timothy, and to everybody joining us now. Today is August the 17th, and this is Japanese Politics One-on-One, episode 236. And today we're going to talk about the latest happenings in Japanese politics, about the commemoration also of the end of the Second World War, the festivities here, and what is going on in the LDP. And I'm not going to keep you waiting, Timothy, so this is over to you, so that you can tell us what we're going to hear from you today.
Great. Thank you very much, Maya. Today is, as Maya said, August 17th. This is episode 236, consecutively throughout 4.5 years. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm reporting today from Misaki Harbor, which is at the tip of the Yokohama Peninsula. And this is the final day of Obon, I think you probably know, which means that today the roads and the rails and the airports will be heavily congested as people return home. This is one of the maybe 2 or 3 times that the Japanese nation kind of as a whole takes a couple of days off for just whatever. But it happens in Oshogatsu, it happens in Golden Week, and it happens during Obon. So today I'm going to talk once again about the yen and the global markets, what's going on there. That's always important. The Prime Minister's diplomatic schedule. The end of the war was a big deal. The the memorial of the 80 years completion of this was on Friday. So Friday was a buzz with activity. I'd like to talk a little bit about that. And also the Prime Minister is still in a bit of a pickle. He is still Prime Minister. The LDP still doesn't have any controlling forces within the upper house and the lower house. So there's something they have to do to win that, to cajole that. And also there's something going on with, are we going to keep the Prime Minister or not? So I'd like to talk about that a little bit. And domestic politics always eats up a huge part. It is the main focus of our briefing, but there's much more stuff going on. Expo for this year is reaching its climax. They've had some infrastructure challenges last week, and also today is also I believe a record-breaking heat day. But Osaka has had that too, and people who are going to the expo are suffering some from the walking in between pavilions and the intense sunlight and a little bit of heat, and they've had a little bit of a snafu there that I'd like to report about. And then I'd like to wrap it up with key developments this week in the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Forces, what's going on with the economy, what you can expect with the tariffs, what's going on with the United States and how that's going to impact Japanese business and moving forward. And how things are going here in Japan from basically a kind of a global scale. So let me get into that in more detail after I pass it over to Maya.
Sure. Thank you, Timothy. And to everybody watching us now, or maybe will be watching us later, remember to that you have watched the briefing by hitting like, subscribe, or even sharing this briefing with your colleagues or friends and people who you know might benefit from it. Also, leave your questions and comments so that we can go to them in the Q&A session today, so that, we know once again that you have been here and you have been keeping informed. And, for the moment, another thing I wanted to say is that, as Timothy usually mentions, there is synopsis of the briefing, which is published usually a couple of days later after Sunday, and you can find it on Substack, or it can be delivered also directly into your email box if you subscribe to the newsletter. So the newsletter is a weekly newsletter, and it's easy to subscribe for it. But if you wonder how to do it and don't know, let me know, and I'll add your email address to the mailing list. So Timothy, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Maya. Japan hands, the yen closed on Friday at 146.85, just a tad richer than it did this time last week. And this level reflects delicate balance between the domestic monetary policy constraints dictated by the Bank of Japan and the finance ministry and global market forces. So this continues to go on. And earlier this week, the Secretary of the Treasury, Besant's comments signaled doubts about the yen's ability to regain significant strength. And he added some bearish pressure, which is very unlikely coming from the Secretary of the U.S. Treasury. The Dow, in fact, hovered resilience, or actually showed resilience, while the Nikkei traded mixed. But the United States was doing extremely well as well. So there's a lot of optimism going on. The markets are reacting positively, but it just highlights Japan's structural issues. The yen's recent movement echoes past episodes when international speculation combined with U.S. interest rates forced volatility, and that's what the Bank of Japan is trying to avoid. So looking ahead, markets expect the yen to stay mid-range in the mid 140s unless there's a major Bank of Japan intervention, and I don't see that coming. It's possible if the yen starts rising precipitously, but rising U.S. yields and persistent trade imbalances continue to limit Japan's maneuvering room. And let's talk about the prime minister. He had a busy diplomatic week. He hosted several significant diplomatic meetings this last week, while the foreign minister and cabinet ministers were also receiving foreign dignitaries. Not everybody could see the prime minister, even though they probably are at that level, but there's just so much going on internally and also with his schedule. And in particular, preparations are in full swing now for TCAD, which is the Tokyo International Conference on African Development. We've talked about it here. The prime minister has used this. He needs to speak at this. Japan is a co-host of TCAD, and he needs to remain as prime minister. So you guys calm down. I need to be prime minister until the end of the war memorials, which was just 2 days ago, and then the TCAD, and we need to finish these negotiations. And darn it, we finished the negotiations with the tariffs, but it still needs to be bounded up. So I need to stay prime minister. So this event is coming up this next week, and it brings African leaders. The UN Secretary General will be here. He'll come with a big delegation, and then visit the expo afterwards. So there's a lot going on here. And Ishiba, Prime Minister Ishiba, will also attend events tied to expo preparations and emphasizing Japan's global outreach. And this week's African Summit, it starts this week. It underscores Japan's ambition. Always, Japan is really tied to their co-host this year, but they want to cement ties with African nations on trade, infrastructure, and security. It also wants to provide a platform for Japanese firms to showcase their projects throughout Africa. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of ODA. Japan, as you know, practices diplomacy basically through checkbook diplomacy. So there's a lot of ODA. There's a lot of infrastructure projects that Japan participates in. And with the BRICS making significant moves, Japan and the United States want to diminish that velocity. So what Japan does is significantly important. In domestic politics, you know that Mr. Aizawa Ichido was named in the very brief diet session that we had. It went from Friday to Wednesday 2 weeks ago, and he was appointed as the chairman to pull together the LDP members to see who wants to have a new prime minister and who's good with the current prime minister. And there's a rule within the LDP structure that says if 50% of the members, the diet members who are LDP, belong to the LDP, and 50% of the 47 prefectural LDP chapters, if they decide that they want a new guy or they want to consider it again, then there is a mechanism for forcing or for pushing the prime minister to go up for re-election. So it could open up a whole new can of worms. But this consultation period is ongoing now. The diet is out of session. It's obon. So Mr. Aizawa is making progress, but it's a pretty big deal. And this is what is going to be critical in shaping the strategy into September. So we're almost finished with August. I don't think there's going to be a lot of huge political movements in this month, but once we get into September, things will really kick off. There could be another extraordinary diet session that has not been decided yet. But the key issue here for the LDP is coalition building. And while the LDP is not a partner with the Constitutional Democratic Party, discussions with Ishin and the Democratic Party for the People remain on the table. So there's a real complex weighing and balancing that's going on. I think if there's a coalition, the Constitutional Democratic Party has stated they're not interested. They don't want to form a grand coalition. But shoot, Ishin and the Democratic Party for the People, Mr. Tamaki, sure would if there's some benefits tied to it. It could also be that with the Constitutional Democratic Party, that they form some sort of an alliance or understanding with the LDP, that on a case-by-case basis, they move forward without the LDP having to go through this nasty and very complicated coalition building. But who knows? Ishin in particular, you might have followed this, is pressing to make Osaka a metropolis. So they joined the two together, Osaka as a city and then Osaka as a prefecture. They've bound those together. The same thing with Tokyo. Tokyo is not just a city with the Ms. Koike as the mayor, but she's also the governor of the prefecture. And it's the only place in Tokyo like that. And Osaka wants to mimic that. And they're playing to be the fallback capital in the event that something happens to Tokyo. It's good forward planning. It's pretty smart. But we already have Tsukuba. So let's see how this goes. But this is the kind of ask that the leader of Ishin is building. And this could empower Osaka's role in national governance, which is where they want to go. So the governor, who is also leading Ishin, is campaigning hard on this demand. And if accepted, it could pave the way for the LDP Ishin coalition, though risks remain. And I know Byron would just be cheering and wearing lots of beer cream if that happens. So it is a possibility. We can get into it deeper in the Q&A period. The expo remains under intense scrutiny. If you've been following it, the deadlines loom and costs continue to rise, and this tests both public patience and political credibility. You remember that Ishin really put a lot of hope and faith on having a knockout expo. They tried to cajole the central government and the prime minister to spend more time to get, to make sure that the president of the United States, or at least the vice president, visited. That didn't quite happen. But this next week, Mr. Ishiba and the Secretary General will visit the expo on expo-related visits. And so there will be a lot of attention there. But as I said, they did face a dramatic infrastructure shock this past week. A major train breakdown stranded 30,000 passengers overnight. So the breakdown on the train service, they've got one train that comes in built specifically to feed the expo. There was a shortage, and that system broke down at around 9 o'clock on Wednesday. And so people couldn't figure out where the short was to fix it. It took them until the next day. So 30,000 people were stranded inside the expo. So the pavilions opened their doors. They turned on the air conditioners. People slept as best they could. But 30,000 people, that's pretty huge. So it's a huge public backlash, which underscores the vulnerabilities in the transport network and the political cost of failure. So we'll see a little bit more coming out of this. But that's a pretty dramatic for Japan, for an event like Expo, for this sort of thing to happen. In other news, militarily, Japan sent their self-defense force warships to New Zealand for the first time in nearly 90 years. And Russia and China launched several joint naval drills in the Pacific. This is rather rare. Russia and China joint naval drills in the Pacific. And the message here is clear. Japan is asserting its regional role while keeping a wary eye on adversarial maneuvers. And likewise, China and Russia are rattling their sables too, saying we're not a pushover. And even if the negotiations don't go very well in Alaska, we're still here for the long game, and we're not going to be pushed around by Japan or any coalition. And we're far bigger and better, and we're more determined to reach our goals than the combined Western nations. So that continues to be a hotbed of activity. Japan's Q2 growth came at an annualized 1%, making it the fifth straight quarter of expansion. So not everything is dour here. The economy is moving. The inflation is moving up, which triggered Mr. Besant's comments this last week. He says Japan needs to get the inflation down. The United States also needs to increase their interest rates, put things back into balance. So there's a lot at play here, and the United States just keeps getting bigger and bolder and going from various you might call victories. I mean, the president of the United States is on a fire drill, changing all sorts of different things and making a lot of progress as he does that. So the comments coming from the Secretary of the Treasury do carry a lot of weight, perhaps more than in the past. So the government has launched anti-dumping duties in the meantime into Chinese and South Korean steel, and rising protectionism is beginning to raise its head. So this is a lot in play. The South Korean president will actually be in Japan, I think, the end of this week, but it might be next week, on his way to the United States. And the United States is going to be a summit. It's not quite a summit here. It's a state visit. I think it'll be a day, not longer than a day, but it's on his way to the United States. This is quite rare. Usually when there's a visit like this from South Korea, they go to the United States, and on the tail end, when on the return, they stop by and say hello to Japan. This is a little bit flipped over. And I think this indicates hopefully a growing affinity and a rebuilding or reestablishment of the relationship between South Korea and Japan. There was a bullying scandal which forced Koryo High School to withdraw midway from the National High School baseball tournament, which is Korakuen. And this is the first time in 110 years that something like this has happened. And at the same time, the agricultural minister's Koizumi Yasukuni shrine visit triggered diplomatic protests from Korea and China, as we all would have expected. And Japan is taking bolder steps, as you know, in defense exports, if you've been watching this program. And Mitsubishi Heavy landed a $6.5 billion frigate contract with Australia. This is huge news and a great boost in the arm to the military industrial defense industry, which is emerging now in Japan. A new deep sea probe project also highlights investment in Japan's exclusive economic zone capabilities, reinforcing Japan's sovereignty and resource security. This is occurring not just in Japanese waters, it's occurring with all of the island nations, and China is exploiting that, trying to move the boundaries of what is considered to be their formal territory. Russia in the same light, but Japan is making significant discoveries, and so they want to capitalize on that, and they're bringing technology and also diplomatic prowess to that. So once again, I know that everybody understands this, but Japan is really standing at a crossroads. Every week just becomes a bigger and more intense kind of report from this chair. There's so much going on. I don't know if it's ever been like this in the past. Japanese politics never really interested that many people. It was always very staid. It was difficult to understand, and much was kept in the background. But there's an awful lot going on here that moves Japan in a very significant way, not just economically, which was the main thing in the past throughout the bubble economy the last 30 or 40 years, but it has had some failures. The economy just hasn't been able to pick up. The inflation rate has not been able to be controlled, and balancing this fragile economic growth and the rising social strains with the declining population, the influx of more and more foreigners, it's an evolving security environment too, with what's going on with Taiwan and China and North Korea, that sort of thing. So from the coalition talks to expo deadlines, the coming weeks will really test the leadership at every level. And beneath the surface, Japan is preparing itself quietly but steadily for a larger role at the international stage. There's a lot to be seen. It is being revealed to us slowly. The fat lady hasn't sung yet. Maybe she never will, because it's just a continuing progress of what's going on and a change of dynamics and that sort of thing. So I'd like to end it here. We can get into, who's going to be the prime minister in September, that sort of thing in the Q&A period. But I just wanted to give you a kind of capsule summary of what's going on in Japan now that should be important to you. Thank you for staying tuned every week as we report to you on what's going on in Japan. Maya? You haven't finished your cigarette yet.
Not yet.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. We're moving into the Q&A session, of course. But before that, once again, I would like to invite you to subscribe to this channel, regardless of which platform you're watching us on. So it could be YouTube, it could be Facebook, it could be LinkedIn, or it could be even Clubhouse, even though Clubhouse has been a kind of a quiet platform recently. And also, if you feel that these briefings are helpful for your colleagues, family members, friends, or acquaintances, please share them so that we can spread the word. Help us spread the word. And Timothy, of course, we're going to start with the very first questions that came this morning, maybe around 5 o'clock our time.
Ooh, I wonder who
Yeah,
that could be from.
right. Yes. So not many, but some of the questions, of course, are about the anniversary of the end of the Second World War, because it is the 80th anniversary, and of course, there's still a lot of questions that remain unanswered, as you say,
Yeah.
and a lot of people want to actually move on and look towards the future, but well, others are still looking back and asking for explanations and answers. However, today I'm going to read the questions that came from Byron Johnson again, and the second one is about Yasukuni. I'm going to read the first one, which is about PM Ishiba. What are the implications of Prime Minister Ishiba's usage of the term remorse in his 80th anniversary speech? Would it have been better to leave the matter with the late Prime Minister Abe, who delivered the 17th anniversary speech? What are your thoughts on this?
So I hope you don't mind me saying that I think this is a little bit of navel gazing. The words that the Prime Minister selects to use in describing the current situation in Japan's position on what happened 80 years ago. So people parse through it and they weigh it very carefully. There are so many people within the LDP, particularly those members, and there are a lot of them who belonged to Seiwakai, who say Mr. Abe's speech on the issue was the most perfect. It was the best. It was probably written by Mr. Taniguchi, who is, I believe, in the audience, but he was the speechwriter for Mr. Abe, and everybody. I mean, the prime ministers since then. So there has been an anniversary date. The 80th is a big one. And as you said, Maya, there are so many people that would like to move on and put this in the past. And the 80th is a point. It could be 75, it could be 70, but the 80th is a point that people would like to say, can we put this to bed? Can we just forget about what happened? Can we move forward? Can we go forward with the knowledge of what we've done since then, and put the nastiness aside. And then, like you said, there are a lot of people that want to talk about 731. What about the 731 unit? What are the horrible things that they did there, and the dropping of the bomb, and why did they do that? And the fire bombings of Tokyo just towards the end of the war. So there's a lot of that going on, but it goes both ways. And as everybody knows, the victor is the one that pretty much describes it, and they're the ones that didn't do anything wrong, and it's always the defeated that did the bad things. We have an office in Rokubancho, I think, as everybody knows, which is in Chiyoda-ku, not very far from the parliament, but it's very close to Yasukuni as well. Yasukuni on Friday had the Budokan full of 14,000 people. It was packed. The emperor spoke, the prime minister spoke. The emperor spoke a little bit more elaborately. Nobody's going to criticize what the emperor says, but the prime minister is open for attack, and any way he says it, any use of words that haven't been masticated and accepted by the LDP and by the right wing and the left wing, he's just never going to get there. But the word remorse indicates that we have had deep reflection and we accept some responsibility for starting what happened. And there are a lot of people saying, what the hell? We didn't start anything. It was you guys. You guys cut off, you blockaded us, you You strangled us, and you have invaded countries before. You have colonized them. We were just doing the same. We were doing the cookie cutter that France did, that the United States did, that the British did, and now we do it just because we're yellow people. What the hell? What's going on with that? So there's a lot of discussion in both ways. So, however it shakes out, I don't know. But I hope that's somewhat responsive to Mr. Brillcream's comment on the word remorse and the difficulty of the prime minister to kind of utter that. And also, just to put a ribbon on that, he did say that he's going to make another comment, maybe in September, on the same issue, where he's going to use his own words. He's not going to have to pass it through the LDP. Maybe it's his swan song because he knows he's moving on, or maybe it's something he's going to be prime minister and he's going to use it because he's prime minister, and just kind of thumbing his nose at everybody else because this is my speech, this isn't your speech, and this is how I feel. So he does have a particular view of what happened during the war, and he has some advice for people who want to evaluate it and kind of revisit it. So it's not an unbalanced kind of left-wing proposition, but it is a very delicate thing for Japan, which was defeated. This is a big deal. Friday, I think people who live in Japan know that. Obon is about that. Obon includes Nagasaki and Hiroshima and just a lot of the bad things that happened, and then the final end of the war and the surrender. So it is a very, very dramatic and what would you say? It's just a solemn time. I'm sitting here on the water, and last night there was a ceremony where they took a boat out into the bay, and they had these lanterns that were lit, and they let them go into the bay, and then the wind just carried them over. Very beautiful ceremony. But that sort of thing goes on throughout this entire nation, everywhere, and it's just I think a lot of people just it's difficult for them to really embody what this means to the Japanese. So yes, hopefully 80 years is a turning point, but a turning point means a lot of different things. A turning point could mean, the Constitution that you guys gave us 80 years ago, thank you very much, but we've got other ideas now. We're going to revise the Constitution. We're making great progress in developing military hardware. We're going to go in that direction. So Article 9, we need to revise that. Could be a lot of things, be careful what you wish for. Maya?
Right, yes. Okay, thank you. And moving on to the second question, is there a way to remove the remains of the few executed leaders of the war from Yasukuni so that the solemn remembrance of the millions who died in the ill-fated war can proceed without rancor at Yasukuni itself?
No, I don't think so. That's from Byron?
Yes.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. So in most grave sites, in most countries where they have a grave or something like that, they entomb some sort of remains or something physical of the person who departed. And in Japan, it's the spirit. It's the resting for the spirit. So you can't really extract that sort of thing. I don't think that would be acceptable to the Japanese. Not everybody hates Tojo or the war criminals. The United States needed to pin the blame on somebody, and they did that at the expense of of leaving the emperor completely untouched and alone. I mean, that was part of the deal. So yeah, it's unfortunate. There were some bad things that were done, but they lost, and people have to take responsibility for that, including the prime minister, the war minister, and that sort of thing. But I think Yasukuni is different. It's a great place to visit. It is very holy and solemn, but it is a resting place not just for these war criminals. They get all the attention, but it is the resting place. It is a memorial for all soldiers who have died in combat with Japan. So it's the resting place for foreigners as well as Japanese, and it's not just the soldiers.
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of misunderstanding about all the soldiers who have been interned in the Yasukuni Shrine. And only recently, I think that Edo Naito had a very good article in Japan Times where he wrote about this. So basically, all those soldiers, their bodies are not buried in Yasukuni. It's just their bodies have been spread all over Japan, all over Asia. And so the shrine has interned the souls of the soldiers who have died in wars from, I think, since it is 1850 something, I believe. I don't remember the exact year. But it's not just the soldiers who passed, who were killed in Second World War. And the point is that this is a Shinto shrine, and by interning the souls of these soldiers, whatever they did in their lives, their physical lives here on Earth, basically the interning them means purification.
Yeah.
And for this reason, when the Japanese go to Yasukuni, they do not honor what those people did in their lifetime. They pray for their souls to
Yeah.
find peace and purity in the afterlife. So this
Right.
is not about what do you call that, honoring their crimes or anything. It is just the opposite.
Yeah.
And I think that this message hasn't been sent often enough, and this hasn't been repeated often enough. And for this reason, there is a lot of misunderstanding also in China and in South Korea. So I believe that one of the things that Japan needs to do is to amplify this, because this is Shinto. This is one of the Japanese are not religious per se, but this is one of the rites they respect and they follow. So, and they follow it not only for the people who died in wars, but for their relatives, and their friends and colleagues and everything. Yes.
So
So
also, if I can add a little bit of salt to that, Maya, just logistically, all of the soldiers in China, in Manchuria, in the battles, Okinawa, Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, the logistics of getting the dead and burying them or cremating them, or it just doesn't happen. I mean, by the end of the war, they were exhausted anyway, and they're thinking of feeding themselves and just survival. So taking care of what happened on the battlefield, it becomes a distant thought. And when I was growing up in Okinawa, I can't tell you how many times I came across Japanese soldiers' decayed bodies in caves and in enclaves which were not explored and not pacified by U.S. soldiers when they went in, because as a kid you would do things that a soldier would never do, exploring caves and things like that. So there's it's all over. This is all over the Pacific and the Philippines and throughout the place. So when that happens to you, I think psychologically you have to change your vision, and it is Shinto too. So the physical embodiment and the spiritual repose are very different and considered differently here in this country.
indeed, and I can see. So Frederick Gunlach says every August is the same historical review around what used to be called VJ Day, Victory over Japan Day, back in the day. Some revisionism shows up. An academic back home, Victor Davis Hansen, posted a good YouTube about it. And I don't know what you mean by revisionism, Rick. I would say that as time passes, I think that the deeds, even of the victors, become judged much more, strictly and I would say harshly. Because once again, many people say victors write the history. And yes, Japan, you wrote also that in 1945, it was the end of 35 years of warfare by Japan. I think people were exhausted here. Yeah, so, but once again, because Japan did what it did, it is not commendable, it is not forgivable, but at the same time, it seems that Japan gets singled out because all the other great powers did that too. All right. And I think that we need to recognize that as well. Not excuse it, but remember so that such deeds are not repeated. Okay. And then, so I will move on to the next one. We are getting into, okay, more about deals and economy here. Okay, we've got Andrew Goins, who wrote about the deal between Japan Steel and the US. He says, is the deal between American Steel and Nippon Steel more beneficial to America or Japan? What do you think, Timothy?
Well, it's a deal, so nobody's going to sign a deal unless there is, overall benefit to them. And some of that benefit to the, when you look at it, you think, wow, how did the United States extract so much? But what the United States was able to extract in order to close that deal is part theater, it's part Donald Trump. So the real details of the deal, I mean, the Japanese, perhaps they want to increase their footprint. It's not about employment, because I think Japan Steel going into the United States and revitalizing and updating U.S. steel is more about technology. It's not more about employing steel workers. So I don't know. I'm not studying the game that closely, but absolutely the Japanese are getting something out of that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have signed the deal. And it is a huge deal. And it benefits, I think it benefits Nippon Steel terrifically. But it was about time for U.S. Steel to make some changes. And I guess because it was Donald Trump, he extracted as much of a concession as he could. But I'm not as close to that deal. Maybe there are others in the audience who can contribute a little bit more richly. Sorry about that, Andrew, but thanks for the question.
Yeah, and one more thing, I believe that we have all realized that after the Second World War, since we just commemorated the end of the war, the 80th anniversary of it, after the Second World War, Japan has been an exemplary player here in Asia. It has been also one of the greatest donors of funds to developing nations and also to other nations as well. And in Japan, when it comes to deals and bargains, the Japanese usually pursue win-win situations. So I think that in this situation, in this particular case, it's not about who got more. It's about, moving forward together. And this is another thing that many people, probably business people in the Western world, are not do not understand yet. That when the Japanese sign a deal, they try to make it work for all the stakeholders, not only for themselves. So, in this sense, the question here: which party will benefit more? The Japan Steel or the US Steel? I think that this is not the right question in this case. But of course, I am open to suggestions, and also to other questions. So if you feel like debating this, please let us know. And now let's move on with other questions here. We have a question from Rossi Lamont Walter. He writes, I would like to understand more about what the following observations reported by NHK are based on and pointing to. What are these investments and exports, and what do they mean for the near future? So, the investments and exports are: the latest data says private consumption grew by 0.2% from the previous quarter. Corporate capital investment expanded 1.3%, and housing investment rose 0.8%. Observers say exports were up 2%, despite higher tariffs from the United States coming into effect during the period. So, what are your thoughts on this, Timothy?
I don't know. That's getting pretty technical for me, Rossi. But I would say that for the last 5 months, since the threat of tariffs came up, people were holding off. They were holding off on signing contracts or filling up warehouses or doing the things that they normally do, because they weren't sure that the tariffs, when they went into effect, they might be retroactive or they might be applied under some sort of a combination. So things were really frozen here. And once the tariff agreement was reached, then people understood this is the time it's going to start. And in fact, the tariffs haven't quite kicked off yet. There's another period. And in fact, the United States has said the tariffs are not going to kick off immediately at the number that we have established. They will come in very slow to give manufacturers time to come in and build up the warehouse and to hire people and to train people and stuff like that. So even if it's a 15%, it's not going to be 15% right away. We want you to manufacture here, so it'll be 7%, and we'll give you a year or two. And if you haven't made progress on breaking ground or hiring people, then it goes up to 15%, and there could be retribution after that. So I think once people understood, oh, this is the deal that we have now, go ahead and start making those shipments. I think that's what happened. And I don't know about you, Rossi, but I could feel it myself that once the tariff controversy had been somewhat resolved, there was a sigh of relief, and all of a sudden business started to move forward. I could feel it, in my daily life. Things were becoming a little bit more positive. People were becoming a little bit more gregarious. You'd see more people out in business community meetings and things like that. So that 5-6 month very difficult period where everybody was just very pensive and waiting, and what is Trump going to do next, is behind us now, and that might be part of the reason. I don't know what your thoughts are on it, Maya.
Well, I thought I'm not an economist, but I also think that the higher prices also have something to do with this, because if you look at the numbers in absolute amounts of money, then you understand that prices are higher. In some cases, they're close to double, right, compared to previous quarters, and when it comes to rice, for example, and also if you're buying homes and everything, so the prices are rising. Maybe that's one of the reasons also for having these, buy
it before it gets even more expensive.
More expensive, yes. And I guess that's a factor as well. All right. And then thank you for this. Also, let me have a look here. Yes, we had a question from Hiroaki again, which I don't think we can answer. So Hiroaki,
that's not unusual.
That's not unusual. So Hiroaki, if you can help us with the answer, please go on and write it. So Hiroaki wrote about TCAD, okay? And then it's about what is the agenda, Japan's agenda about the new order in Africa. Because the 9th TCAD meeting is going to take place soon. So what is the new agenda Japan has for the order in Africa?
Well, like you said, Maya.
Yes, indeed. Hiroaki, please do help us with that. I'm sure that you have information which is much more detailed than ours.
Yeah. He knows the answer. He's just teasing us, trying to show us up, which is fun.
That's very sweet. Yes, thank you very much for that.
But also the fact that the UN Secretary General is coming, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he just wants a break. He wants to go see the expo, and so he wrapped that into his schedule. But he's not part of Africa, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's meaning to be gained from that. So next week I will report more thoroughly on that, and I'll try to address your question. And I'm sure that maybe before this briefing is over, you'll feed Maya with some of the insight that you're trying to extract from me.
Yes, okay. And yes, here we've got, I guess this is Rossi's comment, saying, once again, going back to Japan and the anniversary of the Second World War. He says, on Japan being singled out, I have read that one of the criticisms of Japan is that compared to Germany, for example, sufficient action has not been taken to take responsibility and formally, clearly address the atrocities that were committed. Germany's actions have been robust and are apparent in the contemporary record. In Japan's case, unsatisfying deals like the one concerning sexual enslavement of Korean women generate ongoing rather than mollifying it. And I think that it continues. I just cannot see everything here. Not the whole comment shows up in my feed. Right. So yes, there is criticism there. I would say that it comes predominantly from neighbors of Japan who suffered the most before and during the Second World War. And once again, there is, of course, there are different opinions on this. As there are different opinions on the US dropping the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And once again, I would say that the more time passes
Hmm.
after the end of the Second World War, the more harshly, the nations that drop the bombs or the nation that don't drop the bombs will be judged and will be scrutinized. Japan, at the same time, continues to be an exemplary, let's say, member of the global community. So I don't know. There are a lot of things that we can talk about, and we can also, criticize. At the same time, last night I watched NHK's documentary about the end of the Second World War here in Japan, and they portrayed the suffering of the Japanese people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and during the Tokyo bombing, the firebombing here in Tokyo. And I have heard opinions about how the Japanese always portray themselves as victims. One thing that I will say, and I know that for some people it will sound revisionist, I would say that in every war, the population, the general population, the civil population is a victim. And one thing I can say about the Japanese creating those documentaries and showing them every year here is with the intention to make the population understand and realize how much suffering is involved in war, so that the nation does not repeat what
Hmm.
happened. And this is also one thing that is misunderstood by a lot of foreigners here. They say, yes, the Japanese portray themselves as victims. They don't want to think about what they thought about what they did to the nations around. But I think that the intention behind these documentaries is different. Because I have seen relatives, I have seen friends watch those documentaries and also cry while watching them and thinking and saying out loud, we should never repeat this. Okay, so I don't care how revisionist actually my opinion is, but I think that I'm not far from the truth here. Yes, Timothy.
Maya, I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like your mic is coming in and out. Sometimes I have difficulty hearing what you're saying.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think because the setting is exactly the same as it is.
Okay. It might be here because I'm feeding off of the Wi-Fi from the Umino Eki that I am birthed next to.
Right. Yes. Okay, and of course, if we read one more thing, I invite you to continue the discussion in the comments about this because I'm aware also that there will be a lot of different opinions. There will continue to be a lot of different opinions, so do not hesitate to do that. We've got somebody, yeah, Amit Kumar Singh writes, as far as legal changes against effects of Plaza Accord was Koizumi can tell you from timelines of new laws. Sorry, this comment doesn't make much sense to me. It's just the words, put together, which I don't understand the logic between. If you can make a little bit better sentences, Amit, please do. Please help me understand. Okay. And another thing is that more documents actually are being what's that?
Declassified.
Declassified, and we can get more clarity as we move forward. But as Manabe-san said here, he wrote, we have to move forward, and
Yeah.
that's it. We cannot dwell on the past. It's important to remember it so that we don't repeat mistakes, but we have to move forward and do it in a way that doesn't cause suffering, doesn't cause, looting and anything. So any of the things that people witnessed during the Second World War. Right. Okay. So with this, I think that we have just gone through the questions and comments. Again, thank you very much for commenting and for sharing your opinions with us. Please allow us to agree and disagree on some of the points. So that is the beauty of having a community where everybody can openly share their opinion. This is wonderful. That's what we want to actually have, and we love that the fact that you're doing that. So, but once again, since yesterday was the anniversary of the end of the Second World War, let's all try and do our best so that nothing really is repeated. That we don't become, conductors of ideas for war, and maybe start a war. So, Timothy, I think that you have an announcement to make about next time. So,
What's going on next time, Maya?
okay. All right. So,
Oh,
to everybody, yes, to everybody watching us and who is going to watch us next week, Timothy is going to report from Hawaii.
yes, that's right. I almost forgot that I have my daughter's wedding will be next Saturday, which is Sunday in Japan.
Right.
So as I'm walking her down the aisle, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to have the opportunity to brief everybody on what's going on in Japanese politics, particularly because there will be a joint family dinner the night before, and that will probably go late. And then I need to produce my briefing points. So it might be a little bit of an abbreviated schedule next week. So please forgive me. But I won't have this kind of background. I'll probably be dressed like the bride of the father.
Tuxedo.
Yeah. So please stay tuned and don't throw rocks at me. But I'll try and give you a headline briefing on what's going on in Japanese politics. But I don't think I can escape for very long. But I do want to continue this, 236 episodes on a weekly basis. So keeping that pattern is pretty important to us. And I think being connected to all of you every Sunday, this community of Japan Hands, I feel so honored and so grateful for you to do that. So I will make the effort to continue that. And I just wanted to tee it up for you so that you're not, so Hiroaki doesn't ask these questions that are going to take 20 minutes. And probably we won't have time for Q&A. It'll just be a report on what's going on in this last week of August. But also let me forewarn you that these next 2 weeks are going to be extremely active. So continue to stay tuned.
Yes, and we'll join you in celebrating your daughter's wedding. So, everybody who is here today, please join us next Sunday
Thank you.
again for an abbreviated version of the briefing. But next Sunday, we can say once again, congratulations, Timothy. All
Thank
right,
you.
great. So, thank you very much indeed, and that's all for today. To everybody who stayed with us, thanks a lot. Remember to like, subscribe, share, leave your comments, your thoughts there, so that we can read them and talk about during the next briefing, or the next after next, once Timothy is back from Hawaii. All right, so that's all, and have a great weekend again. That's from us.
That's it. Thanks, Maya. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
See
you.
you next week.